This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson. Hello and welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. My name is Harry Wilkinson. I am your host on this program where we look at the days and weeks happenings, things going on in the news and internationally and in the worlds of technology and science and health and everything else that we hear about or interact with throughout the course of our week through our various forms of media, of which we have plenty these days, perhaps too much. Often we can get a little bit overwhelmed by it all, and so we take a step back and we look at everything from a higher perspective. We look at how we are creating sort of an illusion around us in which we participate. An illusion that we interact with and learn from and remind ourselves about the truth of who and what we are. And I go out, pretty far for some people, saying that it is all an illusion, a creation of our own, that we create the very highest level of our beings, the place where we exist as one, the place where we are completely connected, the place where we are divine mind is the term I like to use. And everything that we know from what is happening in the breakthroughs in science, particularly in quantum physics, is pointing us towards that understanding that we are creating. What we now know from quantum physics is that the observer in any experiment or scientific study, the observer affects what's being observed. Now we know that. It's been proven time and again in quantum physics. All of science knows that. And yet somehow they haven't quite caught up to the what that really means, the repercussions of that. What that really means is that the scientific method that we've used for so long, which is a method of observation, no longer works. At least not from an objective viewpoint. If you are studying something to gain objective knowledge about it, you're also influencing what you are studying. And so that renders the scientific method, I won't say completely unusable, but it needs to be radically readjusted if, scientific studies are to mean anything. In any case, we know that from quantum physics that we are literally, as we observe things, what we put our attention to, we are creating. We are giving energy to. And by giving energy to it, we give it life. We create it. And we're quite literally giving ourselves a very concrete example of that through our technology, through the internet, and our interconnectedness on Facebook and other social media. Right? I mean, we literally are one mind. You can pick up your phone and ask Alexa or Siri a question, and within seconds you will have an answer because of this connected mind that we have. It's amazing, and technology reflects a higher truth about who we are. If you think that's amazingly connected, imagine how much more connected we are on a metaphysical level. I mean, that has to be mind-blowing to a degree where at this level, the level with which we are most familiar in our waking life, we would find that pretty hard to comprehend, and yet part of us knows it as truth. So when we look at some of these interesting stories, interesting creations we are making, whether it be wildfires in California that are going on, or whether it be the latest machinations in the Trump administration, or discussions about men and women and propriety and boundaries and misconduct and all of that. These are all creations of ourselves at a lower level. We have this little avatar that we go through our human experience with, and we use that little avatar to experience all kinds of things. But none of them are the truth of who we are. But they feel very real, and they should, because what would be the point in engaging in, for instance, a story or a game if you didn't get into it, if it didn't involve you, if you didn't get swept away by it. So much so that often you can even forget who you really are. You're so into the game or you're so into the book that you forget everything else. And that's kind of like what we are in our human world, in our human game. We have a tendency to forget the truth of who we are because we get so swept up and caught up in the game. But then we reach a point where the game reminds us and we reconnect. But oftentimes we get into a mode of thought, of duality, good, bad, negative, positive. And we don't realize that these experiences are tailor-made, custom-made by ourselves at the highest level to help us to grow, to help us to become, and to help us to remember. And yes, at certain levels they may appear to be painful or scary or may cause you discomfort. But if you go into that discomfort and you recognize the truth of what's going on, that it's a creation that has been made to help you grow, to help you evolve, then you can take the energy from that, the energy that was used to create it, because you are part of that energy, so you can take it away too. And then once you do that, you can feel more empowered. If you're going through a difficult time, something is disturbing you, and kind of unplug it. To go with it. And so that's what the focus of this show is to take a look at these things and kind of give a higher perspective on it. I do it to help myself because I need to do it too. The way our minds have been trained to react to things is increasingly not a healthy way to do it with all of the things that are going on around us. So yes, that's why I add the wellness part, because I believe it is a wellness issue. I believe a perspective like that helps you to maintain your wellness when faced with situations, even information that stresses you out. Even information can stress you. And we talked about how that stress response kicks in, sort of short circuits the immune system, and leaves you vulnerable for a variety of illnesses, physical and psychological. And so what needs to happen is to counter the stress response with a relaxation response. We spent a good deal of time the past month or two on that issue, and we'll certainly will be coming back to it. So we're going to talk about stress, because as we're entering into the holiday season, there's an awful lot of that to go around, not to mention all of the things that are happening in the world. So we're going to talk about ways to deal with stress besides just this kind of approach or viewpoint that I've mentioned. But we're also going to continue on with our look at the future we want. Because as we end this year that has been rather tumultuous, I think most people would agree with that. It's a good time to think about, especially as we're faced with changing economies, changing political strategies, changing world, basically. It's a good idea to think about the future we want, and to look at it and realize how close we are to achieving it. I mean, it's it's all well and good to, kind of imagine, but these things, the future we want, is almost here. And it just takes some very concrete steps and some very focused thinking to make it happen. Last week we talked about the resource-based economy. This is an idea that has become more and more viable because of our advanced technology. We have the ability to make food available, and clothing, and housing, and even medical care. We have an ability to provide education to anyone, anywhere. And also to develop limitless supplies of renewable energy that isn't toxic. We have all of this. We have all of this at our fingertips. All it takes is the willingness. All it takes is a change in our awareness and consciousness. And it's coming. A vision of globalization for some is a vision of conflict, and a vision of something highly undesirable, because it's seen in a context where in globalization one country or one group of people succeeds at the detriment to the others. And that's a reaction to an understanding of our global connectedness. The global connectedness is there, and it's not going to go away. And you can bury your head in the sand